Hello and welcome to Penny for Your Thoughts, brought to you by Advocis Toronto. My name is Jeffrey Yang, the Communications Chair for our chapter. I'll be your host today. With me, we have our Director at Large, Adrian Altamirano.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
And our very special guest today from RBC Insurance, we have our Regional VP of Insurance Brokerage, Jonathan Schjott. Thanks for coming, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you tuning in for the first time, Penny for Your Thoughts is meant to be a platform where we connect with the best and brightest in the industry. We share interesting industry news with you, the viewers, and you get to hear us banter and share our random thoughts. So that's always fun. Quick disclaimer, any opinions expressed here are our own personal opinions only and are not reflective of Advocis or our respective organizations. So I want to get that out there. And also big thank you to our sponsor, our chapter sponsors, for making all of this possible. So yeah, welcome guys. Thanks for coming out today. Thanks for coming out, Jonathan. So Jonathan is representing our platinum sponsor, RBC Insurance today. And we're very excited to have you on the show.
Yeah, I'm really excited as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're going to be diving into tech and artificial intelligence. So obviously very timely topics. But before we do that, Jonathan, maybe give our viewers just a brief introduction about your background, your current role.
Sure. So I'm creeping up on 20 years in the industry, which sounds really weird to say. I remember being a brand new advisor and seeing people presenting to us saying, "Oh, I've got 15, I've got 20 years experience," and being in awe. Now I'm one of them. which is weird. So I started as a Sun Life financial advisor in 2006.
Nice.
So backstory: born and raised in Ottawa. I went to University of Calgary where I did my undergrad and I also swam competitively as well. And as I was finishing up my undergrad and still very much enjoying the student lifestyle.
Oh yeah.
A very good friend of the family who's old MetLife Hall of Fame, really successful advisor, started calling me saying, "Hey, Jonathan, you got to come back to Ottawa. You got to come work for Clarica." It was Clarica at the time. And after a number of persistent phone calls, I finally made the decision, you know what, time to get an adult job and, move back home where all my family is. So packed up my stuff, broke up with my girlfriend, and and headed back to Ottawa.
I hope it was a good breakup. It was like an amicable breakup.
Things this industry does.
I know, right?
So yeah, when I got home, moved back in with my parents, which was a bit of an adventure after 5.5, 6 years away. Got a set of LQP books, and in October 2006, Friday the 13th of October 2006. So
perfect.
That's always memorable. Started my career as an advisor with Sun. Right. And, like any new advisor, just really busted my butt any way I could to make some sales, and, was growing a fairly successful business as a young new person in the industry.
Right.
And the new lady that I met that I ended up marrying, she ended up getting a job opportunity in Hamilton. So in 2009, I sold my book of business, moved back to Hamilton, and it couldn't have, in the grand scheme of things, couldn't have been any better for me. There was an opportunity to join the leadership team in the Hamilton Burlington Sun Life office. So from 2009 to 2019, I held various leadership roles at Sun Life. I was sales manager, associate manager, financial center manager, regional manager, senior associate manager. And in August 2009, I left Sun Life to join RBC Insurance in my current role as regional vice president of insurance brokerage. So I oversee the wholesalers for almost all of Ontario, except for Ottawa, except for Montreal. Right. Today we've got 7 living benefit teams, 2 life teams, 2 wealth teams, and couldn't be happier, and really proud of the folks that I get to work with and lead every day.
Yeah, no, you have a really world leading team that you work with. I'm very impressed with the people that you work with and the caliber there. What was it like when you first started as an advisor? And it must have been challenging.
Yeah, I was, 2006, so 25 years old. Right. Probably looked 12.
I know a thing or two about that.
So, you know what? I did what a lot of new advisors, my age starting the business then, I went after mortgage insurance, and sent out a lot of mailers and knocked on doors, like all the kind of old school stuff that you did to generate some business.
Yeah, of course.
And it kind of takes you back. I remember I was the king in my branch of the $250,000 T10 or T20, because that's what in the suburbs of Ottawa, that's what a house was going for.
Right.
In 2006, 2007. Still remember, I did just under 100 new apps in my first year.
100 new apps.
Yeah, and that was...
Wasn't that called, was it Quick Start?
Yeah, Quick Start and Continued Success.
Yeah.
But, that was kind of my jam, is connecting with other kind of young folks who are getting married, buying their first home. And that's what drove the lion's share of my business for the first couple of years. For my learning as an advisor, the crash in 2008 was one of the best things that ever happened to me. I partnered with a lot of senior advisors, some of whom were kind of hiding under their desk. But I got deep into learning, what is a subprime mortgage, and how did this happen? And, so I worked in partnership with a lot of senior advisors, just saying, hey, I bet you've got a lot of questions. Why don't we get together and talk about it? And in terms of growing my wealth practice at the time, that was the best thing that ever happened. Because just having someone who could come in, take the time and explain in detail, what's going on and what should you be anxious about and what shouldn't you be anxious about, was the best thing that ever happened. It was really a huge learning experience for me, because you're kind of going into those meetings. Yes, the end result is you want to bring in assets, you want to grow your practice, but you've got a lot of nervous, anxious investors out there, and just using that knowledge to put them at ease and give them the tools they need to feel a bit more confident was something that I've always kind of remembered and always taken with me in different roles.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think, it's easy to forget the human elements of our practice. And, sometimes I hear from advisors, they feel like a therapist with their clients sometimes when the market's going down, but you kind of have to be to be a good advisor.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important part, to be honest. I love that saying, we're not in a business that deals with money. We're in a business that happens to deal with people.
Yep.
Right. And that's really what it comes down to. Our core business, even in our functions today, because we're not dealing with the end client as much, it's still the advisors are now our client. We treat them the same way as when we were advisors in the past, which is fascinating that you have that experience. How is that translated into what you do today, having that experience of being an advisor and being in the field?
Yeah, well, I think it's something that I carry with me in leading my team. At the end of the day, everything we do, there's a client at the end of it.
That's right.
Right. And in everything we do, at the end of the day, we want to give advisors the tools they need and help them develop the skills they need to serve their clients most effectively. And one example, for the last couple of months, I've been running a kind of a book study group with my wealth team, and we're reading Nick Murray's The Excellent Investment Advisor.
Yeah.
So this book is out of print. I think the newest version of it is the Behavioral Investor, I believe is the title. But it's it's about being an investment advisor, but it's really about coaching people and helping them understand what are the things that matter and what's just noise. And that book was published in the mid 80s, but so many of the themes are, I think, even more relevant today than they were then. Today, the noise of media and pundits and so on is really difficult to ignore, but the fundamentals haven't really changed. And that's where I think there's an opportunity as leaders in financial services to make sure that our advisors and their clients have the tools they need to ignore what they need to ignore and really focus on what matters and what will create better outcomes for them.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that was a good comment about it really is about the people, because I think that's what attracted me to the industry in the first place. My educational background was engineering. Like, I had no idea I would end up here.
Right.
So it's everyone takes like a circuitous path to our industry. So I love that.
For sure.
Yeah, that's one of our favorite questions on the podcast, to be honest. Is how did you end up here? Because no one wakes up wanting to be in insurance.
Exactly.
It's a fantastic business.
Yeah, no. So thanks so much for sharing that, Jonathan.
Yeah, for sure.
So speaking of the noise that's going on in media right now, so obviously the big hot topic right now is cutting edge technology and especially artificial intelligence. So unless you've been living on a rock for the past like 5-10 years, you would have seen the explosion of artificial intelligence and how it's being adopted by every single industry. I I don't like the word disruption.
Or feared. Many
Yes,
industries.
a lot of excitement and fears.
Yeah.
I don't like the word disruption. I think it's become a bit of a buzzword these days, but this has been a massive disruption across all industry, not just our industry.
Right.
And so you hear stories about even like the most random sector, for example, would be like the art sector. There are a lot of artists right now being very concerned about AI art, right? Because you can literally just go in, put in a couple words, and there's, a beautiful picture, right? And that's caused a lot of concern for artists, right? Manufacturing industries, right? Things getting automated. So it's not just our industry, but I kind of wanted to discuss this and kind of get your thoughts. What are you seeing out there in terms of how AI is being adopted? Are you scared for the future? Are you excited? What's caught in your eye? So maybe we'll start with Jonathan.
Yeah. Sure. So, I'm by no means an expert in AI, but I'm endlessly fascinated by what it can do for us now and sort of what's to come. And, I'm in a spot, and ours, like many other organizations, are taking a pretty slow approach to adopting AI. And I don't blame organizations for taking that position, because there's a lot of questions. There's questions around privacy. There's questions around data and how that's going to be used. But I think the flip side to that, and what we're already seeing in some advisor practices today, is using some of these tools just to help us become more efficient and help us create a better client experience. And my advice for anyone who's a bit anxious or a bit not sure about what to try and how to do it is just to start small. And I'll give you one example. So we were in the process of launching a corporate life insurance school for advisors, and during one of the sessions, we talk about primarily, cover letters and what should go into a cover letter, and how do you sort of package, particularly a corporate life case, for the carrier in a way that really articulates what the need is, how you're going about filling that need, and any other relevant details. And I kind of scratch my head and go, okay, but where's the cover letter? And in probably 15 minutes, I created 3 corporate letters for different business needs, 3 corporate letters for personal needs, estate planning, transfer of assets, what have you. And it's literally, you've got a nice template, kind of fill in the blanks. And, I kind of floated this around to the team going, oh my God, like the days of writing a cover letter from scratch are gone, or should be. And, for any advisor submitting a case that's even mildly complex, the, carrier underwriting teams love this stuff, because it gives them so much more to go on in assessing that situation, assessing that risk. It will reduce cycle times, because there's less back and forth for agent replies and getting more information and so on. That's, one small example where you can pop on and in less than a couple minutes get a template of something you need that otherwise you might sit there and type it out and forget details, or alternatively just not submit with your cases because it's a bit of a pain.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And like, it can be like, I think cover letters are a fantastic example of that. And it's a bit more complex for advisors to get their head around sometimes with applications. But even things just like generating emails for clients is something that like advisors just go in, pop up, and then just have a templated email ready to go. So
I've got an advisor story that I found fascinating with AI in particular. So this is a leading wealth advisor practice. And he goes, it's completely revolutionized the way I do business. So he's able to have a client meeting, just like we're having here. Let's say there's a table. The best discussions in our business are done face to face, even though virtual is incredibly useful and being used by advisors and our industry. There's just, when you have that face to face with a client, he goes, there's nothing better. And I agreed. So he goes, I also don't like having to distract myself, having to take notes, even on my scribe or on my computer. So he uses a AI software that is, simultaneously recording and transcribing the conversation.
Yeah.
Step one, he grabs that information and brings it to another software, or I guess they're not softwares really anymore, but another provider that will provide a executive summary based on the notes that were transcribed, and then is able to provide one with action items. Of course, he's got to go in and massage it, but he's like, that's how I can see 4 people a day, and be on top of things, because the administrative hassle is gone, and he just repeats and rinses this process, and it provides incredible efficiency. That being said, I think you ask any CEO their biggest fear right now, and it's cybersecurity in many cases, cyber threats. I think so. The rise of AI in tech is going hand in hand with the threat that it could potentially pose to some of the organizations as well, which is, just something to be mindful of, really.
Yeah. Have you heard about these scams going around where it's someone can deep fake your voice and then just call your relatives and ask for money? Like, it's
wild.
Getting to that level, right?
Yeah.
And like, and you can spoof phone numbers, obviously. So it's like, what can you do to combat that sometimes? You know?
So I was at a conference. One of the keynote speakers was on AI. And before he even walked out, a video came up of him. And he just said, hey, I'm excited to be here. And we were in Vancouver at the JW Marriott. And then he says it literally just repeats it or continues, but says it in Mandarin. And then sends it in French. And then says it in Spanish. And you see him, it's him. And I'm like, he comes back out. He goes, I don't speak any of those languages, which is so cool that he's able to actually, how real it was, and his voice was there. It was fascinating. So
it is
good way to kick off his speech for sure.
Yeah, no, I bet. Yeah. But it's terrible. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I couldn't agree more. And just going back to the example you gave around the advisor, it's like the efficiency that's created as a result of just that. But there's also a trickle down effect that happens when you've got a tool to make, note taking and documenting meetings that much more thorough. So one, compliance is an obvious one because you've got all of those notes, but also just in terms of being able to manage that relationship more effectively.
Absolutely.
Now like you've got everything that happened in that meeting. You've got, kids' names, grandkids' names. You got, do they like chicken or beef? Do they like red or white
You're
wine?
not missing anything.
100%. And for advisors who, particularly who are more mature and even looking to sell and have succession within their practice, when you're selling a practice and you've got just obscenely thorough notes on every single one of those clients, imagine being
multiples going up.
Imagine being the acquiring advisor going, oh my God, I know all of your family. I know their age. I know their date of birth. I know, again, chicken or beef, red or white wine.
Yeah,
like
so
that,
true.
That just makes that succession that much easier.
Yeah,
and is probably, I think, understated in terms of, to your point, the multiples, but the things that an acquiring advisor would really value when they're taking on a practice.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I didn't think about the salability of the block.
It's a great point.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And we run into that all the time in our organizations, right? The succession hurdle that exists, and there's the notes are like the ways practices are composed are just so vastly different.
Yeah, I was dealing with a sale for an advisor the other day, and the client files were just held in like banker boxes, and it's all paper, and there's no like digitization of that. So how do you sell that to someone buying that?
Exactly.
But that dovetails into just what AI can do in terms of individualized marketing. Right. So you and I, Jeff, might meet, and I go, okay, I'm going to put you on, my AI driven marketing campaign. So drip marketing campaigns, but I'm not going to bother with, one line of business, maybe because I have all of your wealth business.
Right.
But I think there might be opportunities in the future. So I'm going to, create content with the help of AI, have content created that's specifically relevant to you. So individualized marketing based on your specific needs. And, you can set things up and in the background, it just kind of happens. Like,
Yeah.
At the end of the day, yes, it's about growing a practice. Yes, it's about sales, but we know that Canadians are wildly underinsured and don't save enough for retirement. If this is the kind of prompt that helps more Canadians save and more Canadians get the insurance they need, then at the end of the day, it's a huge boon for our industry.
Yeah, you know what, to add to that, 'cause that's a great point, is AI can not only make us more efficient, it could make us better advisors, which is interesting. So there's, I'm a big fan of a software called Planworth. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Planworth. Tarsim's, I consider him a friend, and he's done an incredible job with his software. And what I mean by that is, one of the key things for me is that once you're done putting these inputs, which are all intuitive now, right? If you don't have a corporation, it's not going to ask you about a corporation. If you do, it's going to ask you holdco, opco. It's going to go into intuitively go through it just like an e-app would. But the output will say, hey, based on the things that you've mentioned, right? It gives you this massive screen based on all the different financial planning pillars and says, you should probably have a conversation about this. Old softwares, like I used to use NaviPlan all the time. It's just, I need to, it just gives me the numbers I need, right? This is actually saying, hey, Mr. Advisor, have you thought about a mutual will in Ontario? Client's in Ontario, he has a corporation. Have you thought about a secondary will? And it'll just pop that little prompt in there. And I'm like, man, if I could get this in the hand of all my advisors, we're going to, there's so many opportunities that sometimes might be left on the table. Here's a question for both of you, I think here. And maybe I'm naive, but I always figured, remember when robo-advice started to come out, right? And there was, again, a big push from the industry because of fear, I think. And then we saw, okay, you know what? It's meant for a certain demographic of client or type of client. And also robo-advice paired with advisor can actually be useful as a tool. So, but at that time, and I still feel maybe, again, I might be naive here, but what can't be replaced by AI? Can AI get into the deep crevices of our business and what clients most care about at some point? Is that something you think we will see? Can AI care about a client like we do or our industry does?
I can get a deep philosophical rabbit hole there about AI caring, but
what do you think?
I don't think an AI is ever going to replace an advisor. I think that's a big fear a lot of people have. I think the regulators will never permit it. And B, you have to ask yourself, well, where is all this knowledge from the AI coming from? Well, it's the people, right?
It's collective,
It's
right?
collective, right? And so as collective humanity, we have to feed into that to have the AI output and the prompts and everything, right? And the third thing I would add to that is, think about it from a liability standpoint. And I wanted to chat on the ethical concerns of AI. This just kind of touches on that a little bit. If you have an AI bot giving advice and counsel that leads to material loss or injury or death because it's giving misinformation,
who's liable?
Who's liable, right? Especially if you consider that it may be a AI bot that's open source and there's no team behind it. So what happens then, right? So
good point.
It's an interesting point, but when you get into that philosophical rabbit hole, you can get pretty deep.
Yeah, and AI is far from perfect. We know that AI will, if you push it too hard, it'll start making stuff up.
Yeah, exactly.
And it'll hallucinate, and the information it gives is far from perfect.
Right.
One of the books I read recently on AI is a book called Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick. And one of the things he points out in the book that really opened my eyes is, we look at AI today and how fascinating it is and how much it can already do. The AI we're using today is the worst AI we're going to use in our lifetimes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's only going to get better. And
you mean it gets better than BlackBerry? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I had a BlackBerry. Don't make fun.
I loved it. You're right. But at that point, we were like, this is cutting edge. It's not going to get better.
Well, yeah. If you look at generative AI, for images and videos, what was 2-3 years ago, the first videos looked like a fever dream. It was picture within picture, and it looked really wonky. And then it was only a couple years later, it's you have photorealistic videos of corporate leaders speaking Mandarin when they don't know how to speak Mandarin, right? So
yeah. Well, and you know what? And it's the day-to-day uses as well that I think anyone who's listening to this podcast or anyone out there can start trying to sort of adopt into their professional or personal life. I'll give you an example. Just a few weeks ago, we had my daughter's fourth birthday party. And my wife used an AI image generator to do the invitations. Because we asked my daughter, Annika, what do you want on your birthday invitations? She goes, well, I want Spider-Man, and I want to be a ballerina, and I want a castle, and I want kitties, and I want rainbows. Okay, but we totally put that.
I would love to see this now.
That's great. Yeah.
I'll send it to you. We totally put that into an AI image generator, and there it was. It was Annika in a Spider-Man princess outfit with a princess castle in the background, rainbow and kitties all over the place. It was brilliant.
That is fantastic.
Oh, wow. I love that. Let's talk about advisors for a little bit, because we all at this table work with advisors on a daily basis. What do you say to advisors that are, maybe curious at trying to adopt AI into their practice, specific either tools or platforms or strategies that you might suggest?
Yeah, well, Fred, you guys are closer to it than I am.
Yeah.
But I think like I was saying earlier, the conversation needs to start, start small. And what are your biggest headaches? And what are the things that take up the most time and energy in your practice that aren't really a value add for your clients? And then let's explore some of the things you can do. Like a Microsoft Copilot, for example, can do exactly what you described. You do a Microsoft Teams call. It'll summarize the call. It'll give you the meeting notes. You ask it to send a follow-up email or to create a follow-up email with these 3 takeaways from the meeting and flip it to your client. It's all kind of there. The note-taking piece alone, I think, is a easy example of a time saver and as a result, a money saver for the advisors.
Yeah.
What about? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to mention, I think I think both of our organizations, for example, at House the Advisor with the MGA, we're constantly searching for the right resources to bring in board to provide that AI complement. Or, I mean, I don't know why in my head I'm thinking like literally it's AI armor for these advisor practices, right? Yeah. And some of those might be like Planworth I mentioned there. We have a corporate deal with them because we feel that artificial intelligence to remind an advisor of certain planning aspects phenomenal. But then it's you have to also tread carefully because you don't know what type of security threats might exist and what recommendations might be best or not. But to Jonathan's point, if we take the time to get to know the advisor, like the advisor should take the time to get to know their clients, we'll know those pain points that artificial intelligence can really make a difference on.
Yeah. And I think you're looking at it from my perspective with the team of wholesalers, it's one of the biggest opportunities we see is that individualized education. Right. So, even a couple of years ago, if you wanted to learn more about estate freezes, you're going to go back into your CLU books or you might go online and try to find something.
Right.
But today you can use AI to go, well, tell me everything there is to know about estate freezes. And, I think a Section 69 is the right fit for this client. Right. And you can give some parameters and they might provide some pros and cons for you so you can have that conversation.
Great point.
Right.
That's a great point. And I like what you're saying about, there are areas within an advisor's practice that can be made so much more efficient with AI and, getting rid of a lot of the fluff within the practice. But obviously one of the biggest jobs for an advisor that takes up most of their day is prospecting and finding new leads and clients and everything. How do you suggest advisors tackle that with AI? Because we're seeing a huge explosion, and I get marketing emails on almost a daily basis from like, hey, lead generation using AI, come use us and grow your sales 10x a month and everything.
Right.
And that's a lot of noise, right? Like, they're not all going to be able to deliver on what they promise. So it's like, how do you kind of foresee AI having a role in prospecting if it should have a role at all?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the efficiencies are hard to ignore, but what I see as a big opportunity for advisors is, specialization and subspecialization in a certain market. So you say background's an engineer. So, if I'm an advisor and I want to really lean into maybe a certain kind of engineer as my key type of prospect
Niche
that I want to
market,
focus
yeah.
on.
Right.
So I can use AI to help educate me on everything I need to know and, build a prospecting letter that addresses these needs that an engineer will respond to. And that's that's one of the fascinating things too about AI is when you're generating outputs, the inputs that you put in, the prompts that you put in impact what you get out of it. So you can actually create certain personas for your AI. So if you want your AI to be persona to be an engineer, well, you tell it and you create the prompts, but it's, it gives you that much more in the way of, a tool to really specialize and say with confidence, I'm an expert in dealing with engineers like you, your unique needs, because of A, B, C, and D. And I think that helps with prospecting. It helps with, when I'm meeting you for the first time as a prospect, to help build rapport and really understand what's going on in your world.
This is why we have Jonathan on the podcast. That was a brilliant answer, because I always say, like, the most successful advisors have a niche. They have a niche market that they work with. And some people think AI lead generation is casting a wider net.
Right.
But you're saying go deeper with the niche that you're trying to target. And I think that's a really brilliant thing to call out.
And more specialized. Curious if, and you might know this because I haven't dabbled enough. If you and I are in different computers and we put in the same prompt into the same generator, does it give us the same response? Or is that completely unique? I'm curious because, okay, so let's say two advisors want to focus in on the engineer market in particular, and they're doing the same type of homework. Are we seeing work that is replicated? How does an advisor take this output and make something from it?
We should test that after the podcast. Just everyone put in the same prompt.
Yeah, that's the thing. I've got a couple of AI apps. I'm very confident that somewhere in the fine print, they have access to everything that's on my phone.
Yeah.
and probably tailor responses that it thinks. That's the thing with AI.
That would match better.
It aims to please, right?
Yeah.
And it'll
Good
make
point.
up things to try to please me and try to give me the responses that I'm looking for. So I would guess no, especially as you get deeper on stuff. Like if we're searching for a recipe for something, it might generate the same recipe. But if it's something that's a little bit more meaningful, a little more personal, probably not.
No, and that's the essence of AI, right? It's not a script bot.
No.
You feed it the same prompt, it's not going to have the same output. In theory, we'll test it after.
We will have to test it. We'll put it somewhere in the disclaimer.
Exactly.
Awesome.
So no, that was a really good discussion. Thank you for the inputs there. So I just want to really quickly get into some industry news. So this is the section on the podcast where we go into, what's going out there in the world. I have two stories here that are more AI specific. We're going to kind of zip through these just for the interest of time. But
sure.
One of the big things that jumped out to me was we have an article. It was a study. It's done. The news article is through Bloomberg. Citigroup had a study that showed that artificial intelligence is likely to displace more jobs across the banking industry than any other sector. And it's poised to upend consumer finance and make workers more productive. So they're saying, and there's numbers here, about 54% of jobs across banking have a high potential to be automated. An additional 12% of roles across the industry could be augmented with technology, Citigroup found. So this is all based around the whole idea of you're boosting productivity with staff, but that means you don't need as much staff. So this is kind of a double-edged sword here. And then there's one section I want to point out. They found that the technology could add $170 billion to the banking industry's coffers by 2028. So it's kind of interesting. We're talking about trying to make advisors' practices more efficient and streamline using AI, but it's coming at the cost of potentially staffing, right? So how do you kind of reconcile that? How do you adapt to that? Is it a thing where you have to get the staff to evolve with the times? It's kind of I don't know, controversial, but
yeah. Well, that's it. It's so easy to take a viewpoint one way or another, positive or negative. My belief is that it'll be a net gain for society. Will there be people displaced? Absolutely. Every industrial technological revolution that's happened
has forced that on
yeah,
society. Yeah.
For sure. But there's always been significant net gains for society. Will there be people who are displaced? Absolutely. But I think the ones who can protect themselves are the ones who learn to, adopt the idea of kind of co-intelligence. In that book I was mentioning by Ethan Molek, he talks about the idea of a centaur and a cyborg. So a centaur is, some tasks are human only and some tasks are AI only, right? But the idea of a cyborg is, well, you do a little bit of both, right? So if you're using AI to craft an email, make a speech, well, you're gonna take the prompts, but then you're going to make it your own.
Internalize it.
You're going to internalize exactly.
It's an integration, really, of technology and human being, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying we're all cyborgs at this point, is what I'm hearing.
If we're not, we should be.
Yeah.
But that's saying it's, how do you across, virtually any role, how do you take AI and take technology to just simply to make yourself more effective? Right. I think that offers some protection, so to speak, against some of that disruption. It's the people who refuse to adapt and make it part of their process. Those are unfortunately the people that make themselves vulnerable to some sort of disruption.
Yeah, you have to be adaptable. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the job market is always going to change and shift and evolve. And if you aren't adapting to the needs of the job market, you could be left behind by the revolution, so to speak, right?
I mean, you look at even just the past, I don't know, maybe 10 years in banking in particular, going back to your article, like the teller position, there were so many more tellers in the past, right? There weren't as many digital banks as there are now without the bricks and mortars. I think it's just an evolution that's forced, I think, a lot of individuals that want to be in banking, to your point, and the bar's raised. So, you're working towards becoming a financial advisor or a planner or, so anyways, I think I also agree it would be a net positive for society, for our industry, as long as we keep an open mind to how we can integrate this technology.
Yeah, that was my biggest takeaway with this particular study is that we're focusing on that 54% shrinkage in a particular job role or whatever it may be. But what are we actually creating, as a net positive for the organization, for banking, for society? So I do agree, we're going to have a net positive from this, digital resolution, so to speak. But there will be, a lot of change and a lot of people kind of affected. So I guess we have to be cognizant of that. The silver lining here from the article is that JP Morgan is scooping up talent and CEO Jamie Dimon and has said that he believes technology will allow employers to shrink the work week to just 3.5 days.
Oh, look at that.
So, you know what?
More
Net
golf.
positive.
There you go. More golf. I wish AI could help me with my swing, get my handicap lower.
That's going to happen, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, and the last story here, I just want to chat about because obviously the other side of this whole revolution is going to be the regulation. What are the politicians and legislators doing?
Yeah. Right.
So the European Union just had they just passed landmark rules on artificial intelligence, and it will enter into force next month after EU countries endorsed on Tuesday a political deal that will set a potential global benchmark for technology used in everyday life. So the EU's AI Act is what they're calling it. It's going to be more comprehensive than what the US has, a bit less comprehensive than obviously what a country like China has.
Sure.
This is done to combat concerns about, AI contributing to misinformation, fake news, copyrighted materials, and that sort of thing. That's actually one of my biggest concerns with AI is we already live in a very hyper-partisan society. Can you imagine having AI trying to generate content that's going to drive you even further to the fringe? So,
and it could, right?
And it
has the power.
absolutely will.
Has the power, yeah.
And you see it every day on Facebook and Twitter. Sure. People getting, reposting AI pictures and videos. It's like, oh, look what this political figure is doing. This is why he's the devil. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Terrible. So, it's just going to implement strict transparency obligations. There's also a section in here I thought was interesting. It's going to restrict government's use of real-time biometric surveillance in public spaces in cases of certain crimes, and searches for people suspected of most crimes although there are some revisions for like terrorist activities and that sort of thing. So I thought that was kind of interesting because this is basically the legislators reacting to this tidal wave of change coming. And I think, ultimately it probably would be a good thing to have a tempering effect to it. But what are your guys' thoughts on what the European Union is doing?
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree with that. My worry is that can legislators, can governments keep up? Like we've seen evidence of that over the last decade plus when it comes to social media and creating rules and systems for organizations, and they just simply haven't been able to keep up. They don't understand the underlying technology behind it. They don't understand. I think to some extent they understand its effect on people, but how? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of what in there, but where's the how? And how do you actually get governments to do that? And before you know it, there's a new technology or things have advanced so much that it's obsolete. That is my biggest concern.
No, that's a good point. I mean, you were saying the insurance industry moves slowly, but the governments of the world, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Like
Joe might still have a MySpace account or something.
But I do have, a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old that we keep off computers. We limit the amount of TV they can watch, and
it's intentional.
Yeah, they're not playing Candy Crush on my phone anytime soon.
Right.
And they're definitely not getting their own phone anytime soon.
And that's a bit of a it's a bit of a segue because I know we're talking about regulation, but goodness, could I ever agree with that? Because the fear of AI as well right now in technology, where we're at today in the information era, is literally disconnecting from humanity.
Yeah,
you could live in a constant numb state like Candy Crush or whatever it might be, right?
Well, that's a great example. Like you think social media is addictive now? Just wait.
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly.
We're starting to see the beginnings of it, right? Like with the targeted content and the algorithms feeding you exactly what you want.
Quick, briefly on regulation is you just got to hope that you have regulation put in place for the benefit of society and the people it's meant to protect, not just a political interest or just a simple fear, right? So, again, I think I'll give you an example. Like I know a number of organizations that have actually put a ban on using, let's say, even ChatGPT and anything work related. And it's not, I don't think it's meant to be, in this case, in any way malicious. We don't want you to be efficient, but it's a fear. We don't know this yet. We got to feel it out. So I think in other words, like bowling, you need the guiding rails on this. I'm good with that. You know what I mean? Like, if not, it could be let loose. I don't remember when I read this, but I remember there was a couple key leaders in the tech space in particular that expressed a fear of AI not being well understood and being a bit rampant if it's not, done with a bit of prudence. So
yeah, I mean, governments and legislation has always been, like I said, a tempering force against what the free markets are doing, and that's always going to be the case going forward. Like you're always going to have back and forth, and the needle's going to swing to the left, to the right, whatever it may be. But ultimately, it's there to temper and to protect and to regulate.
That's the goal.
Yeah. Exactly. So that was our take on artificial intelligence. But what do you think? Engage with us on Twitter, as we're still calling it, and let us know what your thoughts are in our industry and how we're adopting to AI. Thank you both for coming out and giving your inputs on this and engaging this kind of fruitful discussion. Thank you, Jonathan, for your support of our chapter, and I'm sure we'll have you back to have another interesting conversation.
Awesome. This is a lot of fun. Thanks, folks.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
so thank you everyone for listening in, and we hope to see you the next time. Take care.